let's talk now about the different versions of Excel that you might be using. I would expect that most of you are using Excel 2013. It's been out for quite a while now, but I would like to just take through with you some of the new tools and features that are available to you. Even though you may have been using it for quite some time, you may not know of some of the differences between the different versions, and there's just a couple of things from a financial modelling perspective that you need to know. So here is a bit of a history of the different versions that are available to us in Excel. So we had the Excel 2003, which was out there, and there was a huge break when they brought out 2007, which you probably remember. They changed the file type, they changed the menu, they changed basically everything that there was. So it took a really long time for a lot of people to upgrade to the latest version. So 2007 and 2010 wasn't a huge, as much of a change. When it comes to Mac though, they brought out Excel for Mac 2008. It didn't have any VBA, so that made it quite difficult. If you were using 2010, that was 2011. What you do really need to know about the different versions is that the old version, so Excel 2003, we're going back quite some time now, the file type that used to be used was an XLS file type. Now, we don't use that file type anymore. The latest version is xlsx, if it's just an ordinary Excel file, or xlsm if you're using macros. So those are the file types that you should be using. So xlsx or xlsm is a much more compact, more secure, much more efficient file type. Now you'll find that there are a lot of people for some reason still using XLS file types, and this happens because quite often when you export some data out of another system, it'll spit it out as a CSV or an XLS file type. And the way that you can tell that it's an XLS file type is that it'll have compatibility mode across the top. Let me just flick over to Excel now and show you what I mean. So I've given you a copy of this file if you'd like to follow along with me, or you can just sit back and watch what I'm doing. So you can see on my screen here at the very top, it says compatibility mode. And the reason for that is that even though I'm using a later version of Excel, the file type or the file extension is XLS. So that's an old file type. Now, if I want to upgrade it to a much more compact, more secure, more efficient file type, I should save that as an xlsx file type. So the way to do that is to go into File, Save As, and you can see here, go into your computer and you can see here that 97-2003, change the drop down and you just save it as an Excel workbook. And you can just save over the top of it and it will create two versions of exactly the same file. So you can see there it still says compatibility mode. So what you need to do is close Excel down completely and then open it back up again. So when you go to open it back up again, you can see there I've got actually two versions of exactly the same file. So you need to close Excel down entirely for this to work, and then you just open up the later version, the XLSX file type. You can see there that compatibility mode has disappeared. Now, because you don't want to be working in compatibility mode, a lot of the tools and the new features that are available in Excel 2013 will simply not work if you're working in compatibility mode. If you've got a very big file, something that uses up a lot of memory, it's much less efficient and it just won't work as well. The file size will be a lot bigger if you're working in the older file type. So you do need to do that. So they changed a lot of things in 2013, particularly when it comes to charting. There are some fantastic standard templates in 2013. They make your charts look fantastic, and it's very easy to make fancy looking charts in Excel in 2013. They look much better than the old ones. So this, if you have a look here, this is my standard pie chart in 2013. So this is how your pie chart looks when you create it in 2013. So a little bit of a history of the pie chart. This is what your standard pie chart looked like in your older version of Excel. For goodness sake, change the standard colors if you're doing charting in Excel. Don't just go with the old. It sort of it automatically defaults to usually a red and a blue, which just looks quite boring because that's what everybody's charts look like. It's very easy to go into the themes and the styles and the colors and change it, which make it look so much nicer. And then just a bit of a trip down memory lane. That's what the old 2003 looks like. You'd be surprised people still have charts that look like that, the old navy and magenta color scheme. So when they upgraded to from 2003 to 2007, the capacity and the size changed a huge amount. There was only 65,000 rows in the old version. This is in 2003 XLS version. So if you're in compatibility mode, that will be your limitation, 65,000 rows, which seems like quite a lot. But we do tend to run out of rows quite quickly. So they expanded it from 65,000 rows to over 1 million rows, and we still run out of rows every now and then. They changed the number of columns and made the characters able to, the capacity is basically just a lot bigger with the latest version of Excel. So you want to make sure that you're using all of those new features by using the correct file type. Something that came out in 2010, I said there wasn't a huge difference between 2007 and 2010, but they did bring out a couple of really cool new features. Those are Sparklines. So Sparklines are like those little tiny miniature charts in a single cell, which are fantastic for dashboards. They're pretty cool. So if you haven't looked at Sparklines, be sure to check those out because they're great. And some of these things have been around for quite a while, but you may not have had an opportunity to poke around and have a look at some of those. Another new feature of 2010 is Slicer. So Slicer is part of a pivot table so that when you go in and filter a pivot table, you can actually put in some little boxes over on the side, which make it very easy for your user to click and slice and dice as part of your pivot table. So if you're using 2010 or later, have a play around. If you're doing pivot tables at all, just have a play around and play with your slicer because it's quite a cool feature, particularly for dashboards. One of the new features of 2013, by the way, that they've actually introduced a slicer for tables, which is great. So that's quite handy as well. And lastly, one of the other features that they've brought out in 2010 was Power Pivot. Now, Power Pivot is a bit of a game changer. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on Power Pivot, but suffice to say, it is an add-in to Excel, so it is part of your Excel. You have it available to you. You do need to download it. You just need to go to Microsoft, put in your license key and download Power Pivot for Excel. It's like a pivot table, but a lot more capacity. It stores the data as a flat file, so it can just handle a lot more data than Excel can, because that's the major limitation of Excel, that we run out of rows, we run out of capacity. So Power Pivot is like Excel's answer to a data warehouse or self-serve business intelligence. So that's something that you might want to have a bit of a look into, because that's a fantastic new feature of some of the later versions of Excel. Some of the things that you might notice if you've upgraded to 2013 is that the ribbon is capitalized. That's probably your tip that you're using the later version, is the fact that it's capitalized. The start screen is a little different. Mobility, when you log in from different locations, you'll notice that your settings are the same. Flash fill is fantastic. I will show you what flash fill does. It's fantastic, and quick analysis is pretty cool as well. You'll notice that the charting is quite different, and they always bring out new functions. I mean, there's something like 400 or so different functions already available in Excel, and every time they bring out a new version, they add new functions to it. Probably a couple of the ones that you might like is if NA, is formula, P duration. So a couple of the more useful functions that you might want to have a play around. Do be careful though when you're using some of these new functions, because these are new. Remember that this is new to Excel 2013. So if you use one of these new functions and then somebody opens it up in an older version of Excel, they won't be able to see your formula. Your formula will come up just as a #NA error. So I usually try not to use some of those new functions until I'm absolutely sure that everybody who's going to be using the model is on a later version of Excel. And lastly, with 2013, they did change a lot of the features of Power Pivot. So if you're using Power Pivot between 2010 and 2013, it is quite different, and it's inbuilt in 2013. So I'll just go back now and show you what I mean by flash fill, because it's one of my favourite features of 2013. I'm just going to go back into Excel. You'll see here I've got a list of names, and if you wanted to analyse that list, if you wanted to split it out, perhaps you'd want to break them into two different sections. Maybe you want to pursue a career as a spammer perhaps, and you want to figure out what their email address is going to be. You might want to pick up, so if you've got the name Joe Brown, you might want to have J. Brown, H. Stevenson, something like that. So if you wanted to do that ordinarily, it's quite a bit of manipulation in Excel to get to that. So let me just show you quickly how we would ordinarily do it. So let me just copy that over to here. And then if I want to split it out, I would highlight the whole thing, go to text to columns, I'd split it where it's a space, and that will split the data out into two separate columns. If I then wanted to pick up their initial or the first character of their first name, I could use a formula to do that. So I could say equals left, comma 1, or don't even need to put the comma 1 in, I can just leave it like that. And that picks up a J, which is their initial. And then you can double click. So if I go to the bottom right hand corner of the cell and then double click, that will copy it all the way down. So you can follow along with me if you'd like to learn how to do this, or you can just sit back and watch while I do it as I demonstrate. Now if I wanted to add in their surname, I would just then go in and ampersand and click it like that, and then again bottom right hand corner and double click. So that brings up their initial together with their surname. If you want to then put in a dot and a space perhaps, or perhaps without a space, you would then need to go in and put in some inverted commas, dot, space for example, close inverted commas, and then an ampersand. So you're always having to string together the text. I told you it was quite technical, didn't I? So having to actually go in and extrapolate the data gets quite difficult. I'm going to show you a much easier way of doing this in 2013 in a minute. Let's just finish what we were doing here and double click. There we go. So that's what your formula should look like. It's quite a handy formula to know anyway, but if you're using Excel 2013, you don't need to go into any of that detail. Let me just go back to the original here. Now I can say, if you're going to try this, you need to be using Excel 2013. It doesn't work with previous versions. You can just start typing, go J.Brown, H. There you go. And it's picked up what I was trying to do. So it's got this kind of, it's called flash fill. It looks at the pattern of what you're trying to do. So then I can just hit enter and it will pick up what I'm trying to do. So it's hard coded. It's not a formula. So it's not dynamic. So it's just hard coded in. It's looked at the pattern of what I'm trying to do, that I wanted to pick up the initial, a dot, a space, and then their surname. Now, for example, if I wanted to go back and say, well, actually, I want their surname and then their first name after that, and it's picked up the pattern again. So that can save you an awful lot of time if you're having to work with a lot of data over and over again. I really like that feature. That's one of my favorites. One of the other things I quite like is what's called the quick analysis. So if you had three numbers like that, if you highlight, and then on the bottom right hand corner it comes up with this quick analysis, and it's trying to sort of give you options. So it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to chart? Do you want to put in some color scales? Do you want to put in a chart? Do you want to put in a formula? So that's something that, that can help you and save you quite a bit of time. So just coming back to the new features of 2013, I was just demonstrating the flash fill and the quick analysis. Excel is such a powerful tool. There are so many different tools and features, so have a play around and make sure that you really get to grips with all of the new tools and features that the latest version of Excel has to offer.